We are live, and I guess we have to explain why we are laughing. And we are laughing because the vibration of Helen, Christine, Neil, and Storm was so high that they just smashed the technique. They smashed Zoom, and now slowly by slowly we are getting online as a group, and we are live now already. And thank you so much for joining us, and I hope we have a fabulous Sunday.
Wonderful.
Hi,
Thank
Storm.
you, Mariana.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for being
Hi.
there.
And everybody is here, and I can only say congrats to you. Your vibration is obviously that high that the technique doesn't stand it. So, Neil, the word is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. And, you know, your patience and your endurance, everybody. You know, today for the Sundowner, what we're doing is we're looking at the role that resonance, obviously the frequency and the work that everybody's doing is such that we've had all this exploding technical issues and so on that have been going on here today. But what we're looking for is through our peaceful intentions and our positive go forward intentions to have a look at this question of how we use resonance and how we use the application of frequency in terms of going forward. So this is what the Sundowner is about, and you know, we're looking for some creative leaps, and obviously, given you know what's actually happening right at the moment, we've got plenty of opportunity for some you know, tremendous creativity to actually be applying itself. So whoever would like to start, sort of, you know, perhaps we could do a bit of an analysis about what's actually just happened in these moments in terms of resonance and frequency, how technology is actually impacted by resonance and frequency, and we'll go from there, see what comes up.
It was a great experience that, you know, I do Zoom meetings and streamings every day now. And it was a great experience to have all this confusion. Cameras not working, microphones not working, working on one laptop, not working on the other. Crazy, totally crazy. But in the end, we managed. Mm-hmm. So it shows the intention that we want to meet.
How do we go about achieving coordinated intentions, you know, as it relates to frequency? So, you know, given what Mariana's talking about there, you know, what are the steps? What is the process towards actually beginning to actually become coordinated, so that we can begin to cooperate and collaborate? You know, are we, what we're experiencing here, are we really looking at the beginning of this cycle that ends in coherence?
I believe we've started it intentionally already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. And it's the combination of all of us together. That's what's important. Like how we vibrate, the resonance of us individually is who we are and what we do and how we prepare ourselves vibrationally. And together, the synergy of us all together is, if you want to say, we could have blown a fuse, I suppose, with the computer. But it's not unusual, like I was saying before, when sometimes when I'm really deep into my composing music, that the computer will freeze or crash, just won't work. And I've just got to somehow change that vibration, just take a break, come back and get it working again. So I kind of wasn't surprised. But it made us all laugh. It sort of brought the joy in to the beginning of this.
Absolutely.
My perception is that we know that we're here to talk about frequency. So we've all expressed that intention that yes, we will come and yes, we will speak about frequency. And what we experienced was discordance. And in the process of our communication together, we will come to anything but discordance. We will come to the opposite as we begin the conversation.
I have an interesting question associated with that, and that is that, you know, as we are proposing, so, you know, the five of us on the call at the moment, we're all proposing, you know, options and alternatives and potentials and so on. And when we do that freely and without fear of one another, then we're inviting the opportunity for there to be disagreement, and disagreement without discord. So, you know, perhaps this is the beginning part of what we're looking at here as well, is the issue of, you know, having your own, you know, your own truth or your own position, or the, you know, even if it's as simple as just what you want to communicate to one another, but to do it in such a way that we all welcome the unusual and the different and so on. So I just wonder what you've got to say about that sort of an idea.
Well, I'd like to make comment on the being discordant or dissonance in a sound reference, that when I'm working with sound, the dissonance or the discordance is, to me, the magic. It's where the energy shifts. That's when it's almost like creation happens. It just shifts the energy. But you don't want to be in discordance or with dissonant sounds the whole time. But it's just enough to shift the energy, and then you move into harmony from that. But I find the discordance and the dissonance is an important part when you're talking frequency and vibration.
So you're looking at a discord as in some kind of challenge to move forward.
Definitely.
I agree. It's a catalyst.
When I do sound sessions for cancer patients at one of our hospitals here, or even, I suppose, I was talking to them about it, but even with clients here and with kids, I find that somebody said to me a long time ago, said, "Oh, I was listening to you, and then you were singing these notes with the bowls, and then you were singing these notes, and it was really clashy, and I didn't know whether you were doing it deliberately or not. And I realized you were doing it deliberately." And I said that amongst a whole lot of understandings and comprehension I have about dissonance and then harmony as our ears and, you know, our system interprets it, especially in the Western, you know, music models, is that, you know, using it so for on one level, it's like training, especially with the kids, it's training them to go with their brain and everything. It goes into a dissonance and then it releases, but it's in a safe environment, and then it goes, and then it goes, and then they actually get used to it to sort of almost prepare them for change and conflict. So they go out and they go, oh, but when they're doing the sound therapy, they you know, if they do it enough, then in life they go, they know that it's going to, if they just stay there, it will, you know, resolve.
Yeah, it's almost like that point of surrender, where you get to that point, or that point of frustration that makes you make change, where you just can't stand it any longer and you sort of collapse into it. And then that's when that beautiful feeling that you get comes through.
I wonder, Helen, given what Storme and Christine are talking about there, if we bring it into the work that you're doing with the information that's coming through in the channeling, because it's highly confronting often, the information that's coming through. It's all frequency based, so like the information, the messages all come with a frequency. And so it's the delivery is discordant, or, I forget the languaging that Storme and Christine are using exactly, but it's clashy. Clashy was what Storme was talking about. But that challenge. So, I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about that.
In the way that I channel, it's not a challenge. I've attuned myself to being able to hear and speak and write. So what the other body of knowledge that I've been actively involved in over the last 20 years is how our bodies are transmitters and receivers. And we receive light, which brings packets of data into the body, and the body reads and actions those packets of data, not unlike an upgrade to a device. Mm-hmm. And when the body has actually read and actioned the information from that particular light frequency, the only way that the next one can come in is when we call it a shatter event. So when all the cells of the body are put into a chaotic state. And I could write a book about the different kinds of shatter events that people go through to be able to put their cells into chaos. The stories are just beautiful. Somebody walking along with 2 shopping bags, each in both hands, striding and very confident, and lands face first on the pavement. How did that happen? How did that, there was no bump in the pavement, fell face first. Well, of course, when you do that, every cell in your body is in chaos because you're shocked. So when you're in shock, when you're in emotional charge of some kind, your body is deliberately going into that state because your body's read and utilised the information in that last light frequency. For the next one to install, it has to be through the shattering process that brings you into chaos so that the next one can come in. And so in our daily lives, we are constantly doing this.
Can I say when I did some study with a man called Fabian Maman in Europe, he's somebody who's documented with the Kirlian photography machine playing, I think it was a minor second or a major second, so 2 notes together for at the same time for, I think it was a period of 10 to 12 minutes. And he photographed human cancer cells and them exploding by vibrating, those notes together there, which is very interesting.
Yeah, Greg Braden has on the internet the most extraordinary, I think it's a 3-minute video done by a group of Chinese.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the way that our bodies receive vibration and utilise it is I think we're only just tapping the surface of it.
Well, look, Storme and I have been having a conversation, much along the same lines, really. It's this sort of trauma event but it's the character and nature of this traumatic event. As you say, like the person, they've been doing all the work and they're prepared, and then they fall on their face as they're walking along the street. It appears to me as though there's a requirement of preparation, so that this frequency moment, or this whether it's light or sound or however it's actually being done. In my own case, like I work with thoughts and feelings and so on, but as frequencies, so like my approach with this is, to do with the minds really. And, but once again, there has to be all this preparation. That's just what I'm sort of hearing, sort of from each of you. So, Mariana, what's your reading on this? What are you picking up?
Obviously, we have all the same video in mind, the video of Greg Braden and the Tibetan monks and the cancer just vanishing within minutes. And this is something I did see in real life in a masterclass with Arkady Petrov, where somebody had a tumor in the neck and they just applied frequency, just putting the hands on, and it vanished. It was visible for everybody. And for some, it was very astonishing that a tumor big like that would vanish in a few minutes. And I did see some people were amazed. Some people did see a miracle. Some people were afraid. And I wondered why I did see fear in some people's eyes. Because naturally, if a tumor disappears, you would be grateful that somebody got healed.
Absolutely.
But we are touching something which is far beyond our imagination and our knowledge. When we are thinking on the power of frequency, we all know that when we apply the right frequency, a bridge would collapse. We know that. And that seems natural to us. But seeing a tumor disappear somehow is astonishing.
I reckon people are asleep, you know, like I've had quite a few clients come and they say, oh, I've had this thing for years and I've been to this place and that place and this is like the last, you know, they think they'll just try something different and see. And I've had especially like 2 people and they had 1 session and they left, and then this one lady 4 days later, she talks to me and she said, it's gone. The lump on my leg is gone and I just went for a bushwalk. I haven't been able to walk for years. And I'm like, that's awesome. But then she just goes back to sleep, you know, because then after a while, oh, well, maybe it was some of the sound work that I did with Storme. Maybe it wasn't. And then I've had that all the time. And then they start to doubt that it actually really did anything. And I'm like, oh, really?
I've had that experience with clients too, Storme, where through communicating with the body and communicating with the cells and asking them what they're holding on to and, you know, how appropriate it is to keep hanging on to it. One woman went back for some testing and it was discovered that the tumour that she had completely gone. And she couldn't believe it. She still went ahead with the procedure.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I wonder, you know, where in our mindset do we hold on to things that are so important to us that we can't let them go, so that we can move into a new way of thinking and being.
One of the most interesting attachments I found is the attachment to suffering.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I've noticed the same, and how much they really want to change as well. Whether they want to actually make the change and transformation or not.
Sorry. Just the last 5 days, I've been doing some work actually with Neil's sister, doing some EFT tapping on changing some stuff. And man, it's a fight. So I'm either blessed on one occasion or cursed that I have quite a wide perception and awareness to watch all these things going on and being triggered. And then 90% of me goes, I just want to stick to this story and I want to suffer. And I'm going, no, I don't. And it's going, no. we're going to make your body hurt, you're going to get a migraine, you're going to feel depressed, and we just want to do it. So even from that point of view, it's so hard. And I think then other people who maybe just don't have as much perception or whatever, I don't know if they got a chance, do they? It's just really hard.
I still think it's a timing thing as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got awareness. Yeah.
DNA issue. I've channeled recently that a lot of the things that we've hung on to until now have been coded into our DNA, and they've been coded as I will have, I won't have, I will do, I won't do, so that it's actually tensioned between the two. Because when you have tension between I can do this, I can't do this, I will do this, I won't do that, that is the polarity that holds it in manifestation. And as we raise our vibration, I believe that what we're doing, particularly with the last activation that we've gone through, where the actual membrane of the mitochondria turned itself inside out. And when it did that, all the coding in the body, all the fault lines, like our inbuilt flaws, whether it's in the emotional, mental, or physical body, are now under serious repair for the first time that we've ever had a human body.
Helen, I just wonder, you healed yourself from cancer. How did it feel? Can you describe that for me?
How can I describe it? It was the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. Everything else since has been like not really, really normal, to the point of, like so normal. Why am I here? Yeah, it was the most exciting thing to be able to have. Well, to give you an example, I had chosen to treat breast cancer naturally, and the tumour became so big it was inoperable, and it spread to the spine, and my T11 broke. So I presented in hospital with 2 legs that didn't work and this inoperable tumour. So the first doctor who assessed me said, "We're going to send you home. There's nothing we can do for you." So basically the medical profession had written me off. But I was in hospital for 3 months. I did have an operation. 6 years after the breast cancer diagnosis, I had a partial mastectomy, whereas the woman who assessed me when I first was diagnosed said, if you're brave enough, you can have a double mastectomy tomorrow. And I go, no, I think I'll just go home and think about this. Thanks very much. So when I began communicating with my body, when I realised the intelligence that was inside me, when I heard the cells communicate back to me, and they were very specific, I called them all to a board meeting. And I said, will all of you work with me? And there were groups of cells that said, no, why would we work with you? In all the years that we've been working for you in your body, you've never acknowledged our existence. We're not on the team. And that totally shocked me. The idea that these amazing intelligence units that my body was composed of were actually saying, if you don't acknowledge us, we're not going to acknowledge you. And that was such a confronting thing. And I thought, okay, so how are we going to deal with this? How am I going to get you on the team? So I said, well, if you would work with me, what do you need? And they said recognition, acknowledgement, and compassion. I go, how do I deliver that? And I'm in hospital, right? I cannot move. I can't even roll over. I've got 4 nurses rolling me over. And I go, well, how am I going to deliver that? And then it came to me that all I needed to do was to feel the emotion and actually send it to them. And I did that for maybe a week. And I check in with them every few days. Are we all on the same team? No, not yet. Okay. So I kept doing it. Until the day I got the 100% yes. And it was like every single cell in my body was a cheer squad leader going, yeah, we're on board. And from that moment on, the movement, the progressive improvement startled even the doctors. I was given a 13-week placement in rehab, and I think it was week 7 or 8, they said, you can go home. And I said, well, hang on. How am I going to get the physio and the OT support if I'm at home? You know, I'm doing really well. I said, yeah, you are doing really well. You're doing so much better than we ever thought anybody could do at this point. We're going to send you home and you'll be an outpatient. I go, well, what's an outpatient? And they said, well, you come in from home and then we'll keep doing the program with you. So by the time that I dispensed with my walking aids, which was from September, I was in a wheelchair. December, I was using crutches. April, I was using a walking stick. Apparently, that's very fast.
Very, very, very fast. And so the major thing I heard, it was joy.
Oh, when I tapped into the cells, I mean, I am so joyful when I talk about this, because when I'm talking about it, the consciousness of my body is part of the conversation. They love being talked about. They do. It's like, oh, yes, tell them about this and tell them about that. The whole emotion in my body is joyful, blissful when I talk on behalf of the self.
Can I ask a question, Helen? When I'm listening to you, I'm thinking you must have a good mental state, a balanced mental state, perhaps, and faith to be able to generate that. I mean, I was just sort of thinking, wow, you know, like for myself, I don't know. Is that true? Or, I mean, you must have had a lot of fear.
I wouldn't have said so before now. Like, this is 15 years ago now. So for 15 years. And I'm still in repair. For the first time in 15 years, this last raise in vibration has brought full feeling back to my feet. That's hugely joyful. I can feel my feet move. Not that it makes any difference to what I can do or what I can't do. It's just that when I put my foot on the ground now, I can feel the bits inside it moving. I couldn't do that before. So, yeah. And it's as simple as bringing all your cells to a meeting. And clients do the most extraordinarily clever things. Now, one person had all her trillions of cells sitting in a stadium, and she was holding like a megaphone and she was talking to them like that. Other people have put them around a campfire and communicated with them. They've basically created this gorgeous imagery to be able to bring their cells into communication with them. And it's when you get that collective yes, there's actually nothing like it.
The interesting thing for me is they're always sitting in circles, whether it's the table, the stadium. Yeah,
you're right.
Circle.
Always in circles. Yeah, I put my cells around Arthur's round table with the thinking that if cells are round, then the table's round, they'll find a way to be round, you know, literally. And it was only years later that I discovered that cancer cells are circular and all the other cells are not. So I'd actually nailed it without knowing.
Well, it's extremely interesting, some of the conversations that we've been having around, you know, going forward on a society level. So we've been having all this conversation around the frequency of the body, the cells of the body and so on. And it's so, it goes up the scale so conveniently to what we're needing with, you know, with our ongoing opportunities for society and so on. And it's all about everybody being heard. We've all got to get around a table or be in a stadium or however it is that it's going to, you know, actually be manifested. But at the end of the day, it's everyone has to be heard. And, you know, Helen, we've talked about this, you know, my conversations with the microbes in my body. Yes. And it was through them. It was through having them around the table and actually understanding what they had to say, that I then got to actually talk to my own cells. And I thought for years that I'd been talking to myself, but I hadn't been, not in the way that I can now. And it was the gift of the microbes.
I'd like to ask you how you differentiate between the voice of the microbes and the messages from your cells.
Well, it's a curious thing, because if you're talking to a cell as an individual, then the conversation is completely different to when you're talking to the network of the cells. And it was through the microbes that I realized that the microbes actually saw the cells of my body as being part of them, part of their community. And it wasn't until I then actually began looking at the, if you like, the differentiation of the groups. So, for example, liver cells as opposed to staphylococcus cells, within the body. They have a very different thing to say. They've got different stuff to talk about, but they do want to be at the table, and it's entirely understandable. So, like I recall well working with the Candida, and we're dealing with a problem with the formation of gallstones coming from the liver. So these are in the hepatic exocrine system, and there was enough Candida in there that they could act as an interpreter for me, and we were holding a conversation between the differential microbes that were in there, some of whom were actually causing the distress which actually led to the formation of the stones. So it can be as distinct as that, as defined as that, the conversation. But equally, it can be more about these sort of global concerns. And if I think about all of your cells, coming to the table and actually agreeing to come to the table, and that was the problem in the disease phase for you, was that they weren't agreeing to come to the table.
No, they weren't.
They were off somewhere else. So have I answered that?
Yeah.
So sorry, Helen. Have I answered your question, or have I waffled?
Yes. I'm communicating with my body and communicating with. Well, each time we raise our vibration, we're bringing in the most, our next level of higher self, because it hasn't been able to be physically engaged with us until we've made that vibrational leap to match it, and then it's brought into the body. So when I channel, I usually channel from the most recent version of my higher self that's just downloaded. So I know the difference between communicating from my higher self and communicating with my cells. And I've talked to my mitochondria, and I've talked to various other parts of me, but I've never talked to what would you call them? The flora of the body. Yeah.
No, it's funny. Like I'd had several clients who had issues with the Candida overgrowth and that type of thing in different parts of their body, and like in places like on the optic nerve, for example. And I actually wrote a chapter about this, or it was a case study in the book about this. And of course, it was all about obstructing the eyesight. And the Candida are doing the best they can to actually stop the eyesight, because the person didn't want to see. And they're the most faithful of servants in actually carrying out the instruction set. And, the implications in amongst cancer formation and that type of thing, and the way in which these fungi are actually able to produce virus-like excretions. So like they create those things which influence the functioning of the cells wherever they are a host, and that's quite commonly understood, a disease mechanism. And, there's an opportunity to actually have those conversations. We just have to ask to do so. What I'm really interested in as we're having this conversation is the frequencies of all of this, because the frequency of love and compassion and understanding and hearing, we hear you and we respect you. Those frequencies are so important. And I know that I'm drawing us away from, this other frequency work that we've been talking about, but that's like, for me, this is where this is where I am, at least anyway. is in around actually understanding these frequencies, or trying to.
Neil, where are you?
Oh, there he is.
I've come back. Where I am is I'm going to have to wander and plug my phone, and I couldn't get the computer to work. I'm not actually at home in my normal digs, and so I'm out and about, swanning around trying to actually manage on a phone, so I apologise for that.
Can I just put a general question out with, you know, what everyone's talking about? Like, from my perspective, I'm thinking it kind of feels like everything that you're talking about, you need to be kind of at a certain level of, let's see, overall well-being, I suppose, but specifically psychologically, you know, in some sort of positive state, and therefore you're feeding yourself good food, and therefore you're exercising, you're doing your energy balancing and all of that kind of thing. And I suppose it almost feels like, you know, some of this is unattainable.
Well, I wouldn't tick those boxes, going back to the point where I began this work. You don't thrive on hospital food, let me tell you. And I wasn't in a great psychological space either. I was simply determined. So I don't think any of those for me were pertinent or relevant. It just happened to be that I was in this environment and I was determined.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, Neil, when you're talking about the, you know, all the gut flora and candida and all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, what did I just have to eat, you know, about half an hour ago? Well, I had a bit of chocolate and whatever. And what else did I put in my body earlier on the day, and then yesterday and the day before that? And I'm thinking, you know, it's just going to be some kind of saint. Well, that's not me. So therefore.
Yeah, you're just choosing what you want. But I'd just like to make comment too, because for me, all of this working with sound and music and vibrational healing, I could say just happened to me. I didn't choose this is where I want to go. I was really unwell. And for me, it was a period of remembering. And I just knew exactly what to do. I knew what sounds, I knew what music to play, and I started getting better. And it freaked me out. I really thought I was going crazy. So it was an interesting time, and it was similar that I would visualize different things happening in my body, and I could easily dive into my body and see where I needed to direct the energy and the sound and the music. And I knew it so well, it really scared me, because I thought, how do I know this stuff? And it was working too, which freaked me out even more. And I went up and down, feeling really good. And then, you know, as everything happens, my whole life was changing. So it wasn't the easiest time for me. I kept trying to go back primary school teaching, because I thought I love working with kids and I'm good with kids and I'll do that. But until I came into the understanding that this is my time, I'd agreed to do this. I know this stuff and this is what I'm meant to be doing, and accepting that. And it was just happening, and I had to surrender. Surrender was a big thing that I learnt, how to surrender. I almost felt like I didn't have a choice, but I did. But it's that build up, a bit like that discordance, what we were talking about, that point of, I'm trying to hold on so I can go back teaching, you know, and I don't want these crazy things happening to me, rather than I just went, just go with it. I knew how to sing the pain out of my body, and it freaked me out rather than being excited about it. Now I'm really excited about it. So, I just wanted to say that.
So you had faith and trust in your
No, not really.
abilities?
I felt like I'd actually come here to discover what trust and faith was. I spent many years believing who I was and what I did, and that it was valid and it worked. And a whole lot of experiences came into my life to prove to me that it worked. So I couldn't discount it. And I went from not looking very good, looking really ill, to looking really fantastic and feeling full of energy. And you can't dispute that. And I knew what kept my energy levels up. And I just kept working on and discovering other vibrational tools that would help me stay in a high vibrational state.
For me, a miracle is happening here today. I had the matinee with the German-speaking speakers in the morning. And in the morning, we had the topic, how to connect to every living being. And the outcome of the talk is that one person can be a receiver, be in the here and now, very open-hearted, just listening, without any judgment, without any knowing. And that open space gives the possibility for another being to be the sender and just to talk about what is wrong. This is the discords and the dissonance, the disharmony you were talking about. And by the other person just being there, holding the space, being non-violent, non-judgmental, somehow healing takes place and a real connection begins to happen. And throughout the meeting of our speakers, there was an intense warmth in the room, everywhere, from Greece to Switzerland. And it was interesting. We had somebody from Germany, somebody from Switzerland, somebody from Austria, somebody from Italy. And it felt absolutely as a family. And now we are having the same topic again. And we are just having the cells of the body at the table. And first time listening to the cells, and the cells are the sender. And by our listening and presence, they heal. Healing just takes place. And so I think it's not about eating healthy or being in a perfect mood. It is absolutely sufficient to be here, to really be here and confront what is there. And I guess that's enough. And I just realize it the moment I hear you people talking now, what happens today for me, and I'm very, very grateful. I can say for me today, understanding begins on another level. Would anybody like to comment on that?
I'd just like to say you emanate so much love.
Oh, Neil, that maybe Marianne, Neil and I were talking the other day about, well, I think I was referencing Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and he talks about healing, you know, they call it, you know, the Buddhist philosophy, compassionate listening, and actually just having a witness to what you're working through, as long, like you said, and it's all of those qualities. It's that openness, non-judgmental, that can be very powerful. Unveiling, letting, like stripping off the ego, you know, and having someone witness it. It's like, whoa.
It's most important, and that everyone is to have their own journey with it, and everything is okay. and it's not trying to compare to others or anything. And just, for me, it's tuning in and seeing what's to do next. It might be have some chocolate, and that's fine.
I think validation is the key to all of it, Chris.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love dark chocolate.
You know what you're putting in your mouth, it's like, I am absolutely okay with this.
Well, I feel like chocolate now.
I have some chocolate ice cream here, but I'm too far away from you.
I think there's some really interesting things coming out here. One of them is the endurance and the persistence and the energy to really be a seeker. So that notion of seeking. And, you know, Helen and Christine and Storme and Mariana, I know enough about your stories to know that you are extraordinarily courageous people and persistent, despite the unknown, which is actually in front of you or around you. And my own story is the same. You know, like I've had to just keep going, just to keep going, and to be persistent, and to keep trying to be as open, and to be hearing and listening and seeing and so on. But there's no way to actually get to tune in to the message. You know, if we're going back to our frequency, you can't tune into the message without keep fiddling the dials. You've got to do the work.
Because we're all inbuilt with this amazing intuition.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had it from the time that I was a child. My grandmother had predictive dreams about the future, which often eventuated. And so I grew up in an environment where she would always discuss what it was that she was dreaming about, and we would wait until it happened. But it never occurred to me that I could do that. I mean, not that I wanted to do that, but to have that ability to trust that what was seen could be made manifest. And so, yeah, there wasn't a day in the journey that I didn't wobble. And doubt. Wake up each morning and go, well, here I still am. So here's another day. What do I do now? And listen to what the intuition said. Do this, do this, do this.
I think that's it. That's the key, Helen, because this is a really good conversation for me personally to almost reflect on 20-something years ago when all this happened to me. And it is, there's something that do this next. And it was almost peeling away everything. My whole world had stopped and it was just me with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I've never ever had me with me before. And that's so true, Helen, what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you just, even when you feel like you can't keep going. And I remember many a time I felt like, oh, I'm done. I've had enough. And a song would come and I would start singing a song. And then I could feel myself be filled with light and more light and more light. And then I started feeling joyful and blissful as long as I kept singing this song. And then the song had stopped. And now I know these songs are actually helping other people. And for me, that was like, oh, that was so worth me going through that, just knowing that it's helping somebody else. And same with you, Helen, how many people, you know, are you helping now? To me, that's the joy. It's like, oh, yeah, oh, that was all right going through all that heavy stuff and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can genuinely say, look, it worked for us. It's worth giving it a shot.
Yeah. But you never know. Everyone's on their own path too.
And that's exactly right. Yeah. You're just steering somebody towards their own intuition.
Last Saturday, Jack McIntyre did a workshop with us. I participated in it, and I'm not sure, you've seen it, Mariana, I know. But the workshop was about the intuition, and for Jack, like her journey has taken her into a place where she's getting out of her head and her heart and getting into her gut brain, and so she had a process and like a meditative type of process that she went through with people. She was teaching it in the workshop, and I was listening to this and I was thinking, this was fantastic. This is Jack through all of her struggle, through all of her, absolutely eviscerating experiences that she'd gone through, is that she realized that she had to get out of her head and out of her heart and into her gut. So this was for her, so that she actually had to have this intuitive experience from the gut. And it was just wonderful. Again, despite the fact that I've a completely different view of it all, is that for me, all of these 5 minds have an intuitive aspect to them, and we should be listening to all of them and working with all of them. But I wasn't saying anything because it was so powerful what she was doing, and it was working. You could see how it was working. So her struggle, her suffering was ameliorated by, this journey into the gut. And fantastic. Isn't it absolutely incredible? And so, like, I'm hearing these stories of, again, we're talking about here, and, one person's journey, once you've actually really lived it, you can then share it. And that's what Jack was doing. And that's what we're all doing. So I share my journey. I share my experience. So in this resonance field, we have to actually become very clear about what is resonating for us, and to be able to create that tone, and obviously for Christine and Storme, it's a lot more complex than that. They make whole songs, but fundamentally, we're creating our voice. And then from there's an opportunity for other people to resonate with it.
And you've got a happy ending there, Neil.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Neil, do each of your 5 brains communicate to you differently?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So this intuitive aspect can come from any of the levels of the minds as well. So you can get intuitions coming in, from the superconscious, which, is out there, like it's all around the universe, the superconscious. But each of these 5 minds actually has a superconscious aspect. And if we're dealing with the intuition of the superconscious, then it's pretty interesting. But curiously enough, all the way down to the subconscious mind, there's an intuitive aspect to it. And they all have a different quality, and they bring different information. But in there as well as all these egoic ones, and they have an intuitive aspect to them. And so, we need to work with our imaginary idea of ourselves and the intuitive stuff that comes in amongst our imagination. Interesting.
Very interesting.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
And I like the fractal nature of what you just said too, because the community of our body is no different to the community that we build around us and the community of the global family on the planet and beyond.
So I just wonder what happens if we really reach out to everybody, sit them on the table, and start to listen. Is there a possibility of healing in this sense of real world peace? Yes. Paradise on earth. If we just would begin to listen. Even to those who seem to be the bad guys at the moment.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what would happen to them if we really would start to listen without any judgment?
You know, um, I think that you know, and I'm just going on how I'm responding, you know, to contribute something, and I think like, you know, it sounds like you all have had. I mean, I know more about Neil than anyone else, but from listening, and you've had these breakthroughs and things like this, and I mean, if I look at myself personally, I'm evolving, but I haven't had any magical filled with light experiences. I have nothing like that. I haven't seen anything. Closest thing is having some of those clients who had, you know, were able to have their own healings. That's the closest thing I've come to that. And my point being that if we are talking about being able to access the whole community, then I suppose then there's, you know, like if I was just thinking if I was somebody coming in and I was listening and thinking, oh, maybe I, you know, could talk to these people, I would think, oh, well, I haven't had any of those experiences. And in fact, you know, it's still really hard, life in general. But so I'm not saying it's exclusive or anything, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
What made you interested in working with sound? Why did you start working with sound?
It just started that I just as a kid, I was just really good at singing, and then that was encouraged, and you know, I got solos and this and scholarships here and scholarships there and so on. And then I was drawn to meditation classes and Tibetan altar bowls, and I bought my first one when I was, I don't know, 20. But that was something I kind of fell into without probably being very conscious about it, because my ego was going to be a famous pop singer, and that's what I was doing. And then, but I was still doing my Reiki courses and that on the side without really giving it much importance. So that's kind of how I went into it. And then in latter years anyway, I did a whole lot more training, lots and lots of training. And I suppose, well, Neil, you encouraged me to go forward and sort of put more effort into that. I think when I met Neil a few years ago. So, yeah, and I love it. I have a really good comprehension of sound. I have a very good comprehension of. I can feel it, how it moves in people, how it moves in me. It's almost like another language. I can, you know, like you do the sound over somebody, and you can read what it's when it comes back to you. It's like just talking to you, but in sound. So, yeah,
that's intuition.
Yeah.
Storme, I listened to some things of yours, and I, for myself, can say it's healing. It talks a lot to me. So I just wonder, when you can compose things that help others, and you see the healing in the people, maybe you should ask another sound healer to play something for you. And just experience what you can do for other people. And I just was thinking of Emiliano Toso. I don't know whether you know him. He has a Steinway piano, which he talks of as his brother. That Steinway piano is tuned, the A is tuned in 432 hertz.
Oh, yeah.
So the sound is absolutely vibrating. Emiliano is on the workshop on the 30th of May. So maybe you tune in the workshop and ask him to play something for you, just for you.
Okay.
He will do it. And maybe you can just experience that touching thing I experienced when you did something for me. And I guess this is all what it needs.
Thank you.
And I think that you would like his brother's sound. Finished. And he
can I ask?
Seconds in minor, mostly in between.
I was going to ask Storm another question if that's okay.
No.
You know, when you're singing or doing your music and does it transport you? Do you feel like when you're, I don't want to say the best that you've been, like it's that feeling in your body. Do you have that where you're just really expansive, limitless, just totally forget where you are? You're in that timelessness and no space, no time. There's no place where there's no words, no.
Yeah, I only when I'm doing sound for other people. I don't get it with myself. Yeah.
Do you do sound for yourself?
No. That's probably why I don't get it.
If you can do it for others, you can do it for yourself.
That's probably half the problem, right? Yeah.
But it's the same thing as making your chocolate yourself. It's just a different thing if somebody else gives you the chocolate.
Yes.
True.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
It's so interesting. It's always the same story. That the one who does a real good job at one thing doesn't take the thing for himself.
Yeah.
What is the proverb you call this in English language? In German, it's der Schuster hat schlechte Leisten, which means that the one who makes the shoes never has good shoes.
Yeah, we say it like a mechanic. Mechanic never has a car that works properly.
Well, it was interesting, you know, my own, like the deepest treatment work that I've done for myself came after I was sort of bullied and cajoled into creating this coherence device, and my license got taken off me, so I couldn't be distracted, and a coronavirus came along and I couldn't be distracted. I had to really focus on it. And the biggest shifts actually occurred when I finally turned around and actually started doing work on, you know, for myself. That was when the biggest shifts actually occurred. And, you know, that's after years and years and years of doing work for other people. But it's almost as though you have to be, like, I get it that it's no place, no time. And I understand those things, but there does seem to be a time. There is a time for these things. And, you know, perhaps that's a part of what we're talking about as well. So, like, you know, if I'm cataloguing the threads of what we've been talking about here today, there's a very big piece here about being at a place where you're ready to actually say something. And, you know, like, so if we're going to be around the table and we're going to bring all the cells around the table, or we're going to bring the whole world's population around the table, whatever it is that we're doing, we actually have to have something to say at that point. And so we've got to be in a position where we actually are ready to communicate something. And curiously enough, in that whole scenario, where everybody else's voice is just as important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And the magic that can be done by that call and the listening. And
I think I might have spoken over you, Helen. Did you have something to say?
Oh, I was going to comment that when I channel for a group, we're always asked to expand and include either the planet or specific groups or agendas or people. And everybody in the group always has the experience of connecting way beyond themselves. And it's so difficult sometimes to come back and be the real human sitting in the chair. Well, are we a real human sitting in a chair? Coming back to perceive ourselves to be, because that endless space is endless. There is nothing that we can't do as humans. There's nothing that we can't expand ourselves and our consciousness and our frequency and send our frequency particles to when we put our attention on it. And that expanded space is, I think, the space that Christine was talking about, that there is no time in that space.
I'm really sorry, but I have to go because it's my daughter's bedtime half an hour ago. I have to go. Tend to.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
see you again.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Lovely.
Okay, bye.
Right.
Bye.
So I just wonder, whether, we have a specific message we'd like to leave with people. Like it's been, very deep and very wide ranging, the conversation. Are there sort of summary places that you might have, or new things that you want to open up for that matter?
I want to state what Helen said already. It's limitless.
We truly are limitless. We underestimate the capacity that we have as humans. And the only thing that limits us is ourselves.
And maybe we can say it's possible.
It's always possible.
Yeah, that's one thing that kept me going towards my wellness, that I always knew it was possible, and I had conflict with myself. How do you know it's possible? And it was possible, and the more you believed it was possible, more extraordinary things happened. And I always wanted to see the pathway ahead, and there was never a pathway because there wasn't a pathway for me to follow. I had to create the pathway because I was doing things in a new way. So it's what I would like to say, don't wait for the pathway to show itself. Just take that step. It's only one step forward. And I had a vision, like in my mind's eye, like an awake dream thing quite a few years ago, where I wanted to know how to move forward. And I saw myself take one step out, and this golden path, it was like a liquid gold path, just showed itself. And I remember coming back going, just got to take one step. I hadn't even put my foot down. It was just the action of okay, we only need to know the tiniest little bit. What do we need to do next? And it might be have chocolate. So, who knows? So, whatever's going to bring the joy, too.
Well, as Mariana knows, my favourite book of pretty much of all time is The Pilgrim's Progress. Yeah. And, as the pilgrim's going along, it's about one step at a time. He goes on his long journey. And, suffered from depression a lot in my life. And he talks about it as the slough of despond. And it sits next to the path. And you can fall into it if you wish to. And it's just a matter of continuing to take the steps, seeing where the path is, following the path along. And at the same time, I completely get what both Helen and Mariana are talking about, is that it is limitless. We are limitless. So to even contemplate that I'm actually walking along a path, it is ridiculous, but it's also true. So there's so much paradox in this. Like it is true that we have to keep taking steps and just really focusing on what it is that we need to be doing right now. But at the same time, it's absolutely limitless. It's an interesting set of paradoxes.
So it's take action and there is guidance.
Without a doubt, yeah.
At every step.
Well, look, I'm so grateful, to the four of you, including Storme, for joining me here tonight. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to hear the conversation and, the resonance that actually brought us on together in the end was love. And the chaos was the resonance that was going on there before. And it's that kind of discord and so on. And all of it's got a place, hasn't it? And I'm just really grateful. And what I can feel is the, that energy, that resonant energy of love. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have some comments from Barbara. And the most thing she says is yes. It's a clear yes. So to summarize it, it's possible, it's limitless, it's about taking action, and we can be sure that there's guidance. It's not so complicated.
Well, it's definitely not impossible. In fact, it's eminently possible. It's just a matter of doing these things. We just got to do it.
So we can encourage everybody who has some illness and watches this video, just take action. Get into communication. Get everybody on the table.
Yes.
And know that it is unlimited what is possible.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Neil.
We'll say good night.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.